Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. You've tuned in to another episode of the Price and Presley Spook Show. I'm Terry Price.
I am Harold Presley, and this is the podcast where we take a look at, a regular guy look, just a couple guys talking about spooky stuff. That's a normal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Paranormal stuff, stuff you just can't explain, all kinds of things. UFOs, Bigfoot, like that. And speaking of that, we're going to have the second part of our Bigfoot show that we did previously with Jim. That'll be coming up. But before we get to that, remember, if you got a story, don't be Bigfoot, and be anything that you can't explain that you want to share with us, email us. We love getting your email stories, okay? Some of you a little shy. You don't want to tell it yourself, and just tell us, and we'll talk about it, and we won't mention your name or anything like that. And but you'll get full credit. All right. PricePresleyShow@gmail.com is where you send those to.
That's right. And it can be like Harold said, it can be about UFOs, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, ghosts, giant mutant monster rats.
Not that. Come on, man. Really? Why you gotta bring rats in it? Everybody out there be listening to the show, I'm not a fan of the rodent at all. Okay? Not at all. They can perish from the earth as far as I'm concerned, okay?
That's right. Well, anyway, what we want you to do is we want you to be able to be notified whenever we drop a new exciting episode. And to do that, you must click on the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, join our YouTube channel, give us a like, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the show. Give us help. We're new at this podcasting thing. Harold's has years and years and years of radio experience.
Not podcast, though, but
radio experience. And I have years of radio experience, but we've never done a podcast before. So we're learning as we go. So we could use all the help we can get, right?
That's right. And that's our YouTube page, Price and Presley Spook Show. That's where you go. And at Facebook, facebook.com/Price Presley Spook Show. You can join us there.
That's right.
As well. We got links to everything.
That's right. And you be sure to follow us there and comment on Facebook too as well. We've got hats to sell and mugs and t-shirts,
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So we want to see people walking around in Spook Show ball caps.
That's right. We want to see you in that stuff. They're cool. They're very cool looking. Very nice looking.
We got a guest that's coming up, and she bought hers. I got a picture of it. I'll show you.
She did. It's very nice. I mean, she looks so cute in her picture. Yeah. Well, that'll be coming up in a future show. So be looking forward to that.
You told me something after our last show.
With Jim. Yeah.
And he was talking about an area where he had an encounter.
Yeah, it was over there in the East Texas area, which is the Piney Woods. Right. That's what it's known, because all the pine trees over there. And I went to school over that area. Right. Spent 5 years over there. And we used to go camping all the time. I know those woods. Right. Those pine, they're dark. I'm telling you, with those big pine trees, it's beautiful. But it's dark in there, man. And if there's no moon, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And so that part's just spooky to begin with.
So you're saying that there very well could be a habitat for a giant humanoid bipedal.
Absolutely, man, because they could hide very easily in those woods. Very easily. Right. So, yeah.
Could you see it being haunted in those woods too?
I don't know about haunted, but, here's the thing. I can remember back then, I'm not even thinking about anything like that. And I would we'd camp in those woods all the time. Yeah. And never thought about it. I'm sure there's probably something weird happened. I'll probably go back and talk to people I went to school with and ask them, something weird happened that I don't remember. You can enlighten me on, and maybe that might be the case. I don't know. Yeah. But I could see it being a place for that.
Did you ever have any rat encounters there?
No rat encounters, no. Why are we talking about rats? Come on, man. Really?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Let's get to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Our guest, Mr. Jim. Hello, Jim. How are you?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing great, Jim. Glad to have you back with more of your great stories, your Bigfoot encounters. Now, just to recap briefly, the two you told us about before in the other show, those happened when you were a teenager, right?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to pick up from that in your next encounters, and we're going to pick up from there. When did that happen?
Well, the last story I told you was 83.
Mm-hmm. No, it was later, wasn't it? No, that's right. That's right. You were talking about.
He was 15 or 16, somewhere.
Yeah, 83. That's right. Yeah.
So that would make it 82.
Mm-hmm, 82. Yeah.
So the summer of 84, I had my pickup running. Got my license, and so I'm moving around. Was back down at my grandparents' house because I worked every summer helping him. So ran into town after work, cruising around, ran across one of the guys that I was with that evening a couple of years prior.
Oh.
And he had actually seen it with me.
The one that you saw with that was lounging on the bale of hay, right?
Behind.
Yeah.
Behind the hay.
Exactly.
The bale of hay.
Behind the hay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, his older brother had graduated and moved on, and I pulled in there and was chatting with him, and he had a couple of friends that were inebriated and had already been pushed around town out of a couple of places, told to move on. They were making too much noise. And so I told my buddy, I said, hey, let's run out to the old place. And
and this is the same place where you saw the thing behind the
a couple of years previous. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
I guess the fear had waned by this point.
Well, like I said earlier, it never scared me out of the woods. I still went over there. We didn't camp. I always tried to make it out of there before dark. But I would still go over there and do whatever needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just aware of my surroundings.
Okay. Yeah.
And so he was hesitant. He's like, oh no, man, that was just the two of us talking. Mm-hmm. He's like, man, that thing. And I'm like, no, man, that thing's long gone, man. I said, don't know what it was, but there's no way that we'll run across it again.
So you guys were ready to take the party somewhere much more private that you wouldn't disturb anybody. Okay.
And we were bored, just bored out of our mind.
Yeah.
Thought, well, let's just run out there. So here we go. And so there's 3 pickups. I'm in the lead, and 2 guys in their truck, and then my buddy, he's got his vehicle.
And just to remind people again, this is in Leon County?
This is in Leon County.
Yeah, just to remind people, this is Leon County.
Okay.
So we get back there, and we actually drive all the way back to where we camped. And I have doors open, and the radio is blaring, and those guys are hooping and hollering. Me and this buddy, we were catching up, hadn't seen each other in a while, just shooting the breeze. And one of the other 2 guys asked, was there a pond on this place? And I'm like, yeah, you have to traipse off through the woods and go down this gully. And, my buddy's like, I won't go there.
And let's remind everybody that in that gully is where you found the dead coyote in the previous story.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
The dead coyote that disappeared.
That disappeared.
After you went back to it.
We hunted and searched, never did find it. And I said, well, we won't go that way. We'll go back up the hill. We'll go back past the old house. And there's actually a road that leads back there to it.
Well, was the sighting of the creature the first time and the coyote and stuff, was that why you didn't want to go that way, or did you just think it was easier going the other way?
It was going to be easier, and my buddy was actually a little spooked. He just didn't want to go that way
because of what happened last time.
Because of what happened, it unnerved him and his brother a whole lot more than it did me.
I see.
Okay. So they didn't want any part of that anymore.
I guess it's a pretty big testament to his courage that he was out there at all.
At all, yeah. He said, well, I'll go out there, but I just don't want to go that way. Okay.
So we're going to take this different route. So here we go. I'm in the lead. We've got the 2 inebriated fellows in between us, and then my buddy is bringing up the rear.
Now, at this point, had you had very much to drink or anything?
I don't drink.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Good to know.
You were stone cold sober.
Stone cold sober. I don't even know what beer tastes like.
Oh, wow.
And I'm 54 years old. So we're walking up there. I've got them behind me. I know where they're at, but I can hear a noise coming from my left. Now, to set the stage, I'm walking down a road. It is moonlit. It's bright enough to read a newspaper out there.
Okay, are we talking a gravel road, a blacktop road, or
it's actually just a sand road.
Sand,
but you can see
it was actually just 2 trails cut through the grass.
I see.
Yeah.
Got a completely wide open hay meadow to my right.
Is this the same hay meadow that you saw the thing in?
No.
Okay.
No, this is not the same hay meadow.
Okay.
There is a wash. Just a little drain for the water to run down the edge of the road and the woods.
Like a ditch.
On my left, yeah.
So
and this ditch is probably 8 foot wide, maybe 10 foot wide. And then the woods started up.
And this is on your left.
And that's to my left.
Okay.
And I am actually walking in the what would be considered the left groove. I'm in the left trail closest to the woods.
Okay.
On this road, and I hear a noise coming from my left. Sound like someone was running through the wood. Now, I know it's not these guys behind me. They don't know where they're at, so they're not fixing to run around and try to scare me
in the dark.
Yeah, because they'll get
in the
completely
dark.
lost.
Yeah.
Yep, they had never been out there, and I can hear this thing. It's getting closer, and it's getting louder, and I can hear it breathing.
Uh-oh, here we go again with the breathing.
Wow.
And it almost sounded winded.
Okay, that makes sense.
It was so intense that I actually moved over into the other trail, the other groove of the drive. So now I'm in the right side. I'm on the right side, and I have come to a stop. And this thing materialized out of the woods.
Okay, now where are the other guys compared? I mean, at this point,
They are behind me, and they are around a corner. There's a trail coming up from where we had parked, and when you got to the top of the hill, you had to turn left
okay,
to go down this road that I'm describing.
okay.
And they still had not made it around that curve.
So they're out of sight.
They're out of sight.
Okay.
And this thing materialized out of the wood, jumped that wash.
The 8 or 10 foot wash.
The 8 or 10 foot wash. And it wasn't very deep, just deep enough to pass water.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a foot low in the middle compared to the edges. And it landed right in front of me. And it was probably about 20 feet.
Jiminy Christmas.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
So you can see this thing clearly because you said it was the moonlight.
Oh, it was
pretty lit out there. Yeah. So you can see this thing clearly.
It was completely lit. And it cleared that wash in one bound.
Wow.
It was almost like it took a step, but it was running, so it jumped when it got to the edge of the wash, landed in the lane in front of me, and it landed in a crouched position.
So it jumped the wash and not only cleared it, but jumped into the middle of the 2-track lane that you're on.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say right now I wouldn't have been anywhere close to this thing. I would have turned and ran so fast back to the guys behind me.
Well,
I wouldn't have said anything. I would have just left.
All you would have heard was a, "Come on, man!"
Oh man, wow! And you just stood there and looked at it. I mean, what happened?
I was completely dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And my buddy, who was taking up the rear, he heard me make a noise when this thing landed in front of me. I didn't scream like scream in terror.
Yeah.
But you
the only way I can describe it is my body just completely, it just flexed and forced all the air out of my lungs, and as it went through my throat, I made a noise. It scared me.
Yeah. And crouched like it was going to attack you or something.
I would have made a noise too, except it would have sounded a lot like a bowel movement.
Yeah.
When it crouched, it actually had its back to me.
Oh man!
So it landed in a crouch, 20 feet in front of you.
It landed in a crouched position, about 20 feet in front of me, with his back to me, and it was really strange. He stayed crouched for just a couple of seconds. He didn't land and then spring straight up. He landed and he stayed in that crouched position for 2, 3, 4 seconds.
That sounds typical of something that's
like he was thinking.
Yeah, like he was making sure the coast was clear before he moved again.
And he stood up, and this is just a massive, massive object. To put it in perspective, to compare it to somebody that everybody knows, this thing was as big or bigger than Shaquille O'Neal.
That's a big man.
That is a big man.
Now his shoulders were much broader than a human. He would have made Shaquille look small.
Oh, my.
Wow, that's pretty big.
That's a big,
probably
big animal.
about the same height. So he stood up with his back to me, I mean, while he was still down in the crouched position, he looked over his shoulder at me.
I see. Just before he stood up.
In that motion of looking at me, he stood up, and he never quit looking at me in the motion of standing up.
Did you get a good look at its face?
Did not see his face. His face was in silhouette. I could see the fact that he had no neck whatsoever. It was just shoulder, and then a head popped out of it, and his head had the cone shape, the sagittal crest. Sagittal crest.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. Gorillas have it.
Oh, okay. So that kind of more elongated.
I got the feeling that just because I couldn't see his facial features, couldn't see his eyes, I had no misconception that he was looking right at me. And in the motion of standing up, never took his train off of my position. He got fully stood, watched me for another 1 or 2 seconds, turned his head and his shoulders, got squared up with the road, and took off.
Down the road.
Running away from me. And there were the whites of his feet again.
So this could have been the same creature you saw in the hay meadow.
Very well could have been.
Hmm.
And I watched him until the hay meadow actually stopped, and then it became woods, and the road just cut into the woods.
Right.
And I watched him until he ran into the woods, and I couldn't see him anymore. I turned around. By this time, these two guys had actually made the corner.
Your friends. Your friends. Yeah. Okay.
These two inebriated fellas, I ran right past them, and they fell in right behind me. They heard me scream or make that noise,
and then they turned and ran when you ran.
When I ran past them, they're like, "Hey, something's wrong. We probably need to follow him."
They didn't see anything though.
They didn't see anything.
Okay.
And it's unfortunate that they didn't. I wish that they had.
Yeah.
So
going back to this, whatever you saw, you said you saw it clearly. It was tall, obviously, over 7 feet, and big. And was it hairy like before?
It was hairy.
Could you tell what color the hair was? Was it black, brownish?
It looked as brown or as dark brown as you can be.
Okay.
Without being black.
Okay.
If you had to guess, how much do you figure it weighed?
Oh, this thing had to have weighed between 400 and 500 pounds.
I was gonna say, like Shaquille,
Wow.
like
Yeah.
350.
Yeah. And if it was wider than
Easy.
Shaquille,
and
yeah.
wider and bigger than him,
Yeah.
put another 100 on that.
Yeah.
But this thing was athletic, if that makes any sense. I mean, his movements
were graceful.
Yeah.
Graceful and
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Heard that many times in Bigfoot reports.
So I ran back past these two guys, ran up to the buddy that had seen it the summer or two before, and I grabbed his shirt, and he said, "You saw it again?" And I said, "Yes, we've got to get out of here."
So he knew immediately what had happened.
He knew when I made that noise. He
made the
knew.
noise. He saw it again. You know, that's what.
I guess he wasn't very anxious to come on down the road to where you were at.
No, he was frozen. He said he heard me make that noise, which I am floored at the fact that nobody heard this thing running through the woods.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, there was enough woods in between where I was at and where this thing was running that they probably didn't hear anything because of the angle that it came at. It was almost running at a 90-degree to me.
Mm-hmm.
But if anything, it was actually quartered away from me.
I see.
Running towards me.
Well, do you think it knew where you were, or do you think
Yes.
it didn't know until it jumped onto the road?
No, I think that thing had been monitoring us because we were down at the campsite, the old campsite. We were down there for 30 or 40 minutes with the radio blaring and these guys hooping and hollering, and so we were making plenty of noise. And this is probably about 2:00 in the morning.
I find that interesting. I wonder why it showed itself to you, because obviously it knew you could see it.
I have wondered that.
Probably had no fear of you at all.
Lifetime. It absolutely had no fear. It almost when it came into sight, the way that it landed, being crouched, looking, it almost gave me a feeling of disgust. Like
wow.
It was pissed off that you were out there
it
making
was
so much noise.
Yeah.
that I was out there.
So why are you in my area out here making all this noise, man?
Had it, but it didn't seem to be very aggressive. I mean, had it wanted to get you, it could have snatched you off that road and into the woods.
Oh yeah.
And your friends would have never known
it-
what happened to you.
If it wanted to hurt me, it could have hurt me, and there wouldn't have been a single thing I could have done about it.
Wow.
It was that fast, that athletic, and that large that I could not have got away from it. You know, I think about it now, and on occasion, I don't know if I could have turned and taken 2 steps, and it could have collected me any way it wanted to.
That's kind of frightening.
Yeah.
Because you hear about these disappearances in national parks where one minute the person is there and people turn their backs, and the next minute they turn around and they're gone.
Right.
They don't know why. They don't know why
Right.
or what happened. They have no idea. They're just gone.
That might explain it.
That very well might, you know. So like you say, like Jim was saying, you know, he's more aware of his surroundings now,
Yeah,
you know,
no
much
kidding.
more when he's out in the woods or any place like that, you know.
So you've seen it by this point, Jim. You've seen or had an experience with these things 3 times now. What was going through your mind after you went and grabbed your friend's shirt?
Yeah.
Well, it was just let's vacate the area. Let's get out of here. And
Let's vamos.
nobody acts
Andale.
stupid and gets, starts spinning out and gets stuck in the sugar sand. Let's all get back out on the road and
just
get gone.
Get going. Let's
So,
get
of
to
course,
civilization. Let's get there.
they went to town. Now it's about 2:15, 2:30 in the morning, and I've had it. I have held these stories in, haven't told anybody
For years.
for years.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't even wait till morning. I drove over to the grandparents' house and came in the house, went to their bedroom, knocked on the bedroom door. Granny woke up. She said, "What's wrong? What happened?" She's like, because that's
Of course, they're gonna think
so
it's
out of the norm.
They're gonna think it's the worst, you know.
Wake 'em up.
Yeah, because we talked about in the last episode how you were respectful not to wake up
Yeah.
your grandfather.
And I know if you wake him up, it's got to be something serious.
So it must
Gotta
have
be
been,
something
must have
serious.
been very serious to you at that
for
point.
you to wake him up
She
like
wanted,
that.
she's like, "Are you okay? Has something happened?" And I said, I need to talk to both of y'all. I
Wow.
said, "What is going on?" I said, I just need to talk to y'all. And so got him out on the front porch, and I broke down the story from 2 years prior. And I just told him, I said, "Look, this is what happened to me then. This is what has happened to me tonight."
Hmm.
Am I crazy?
So it was this was an emotional moment for you when this happened, right?
It unnerved me so much that I woke him up
Yeah.
to ask them, was I okay?
Because you just had to get this out of you
Yes,
to tell
I
to tell somebody you
I had
trusted.
to tell
you know?
that story.
Yeah, somebody you trusted.
I had to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived out there, so they're familiar with that surrounding. If anybody had known that there was something out there or had ever had a chance of seeing it, it would have been them.
Exactly. And so my grandmother listened intently. She asked me some questions. All of this time I'm recounting the story, my grandfather has not said a word. He is arguably the most important man in my life ever, up to that point and now.
Mm-hmm.
I valued his opinion over everybody's. Not that everybody else was unimportant, but he was the most important.
Right.
My grandmother asked a couple of questions. I answered. I asked questions of her. She tried to answer them as best she could. And she said, "I don't know what you saw." She said, "But I know you have seen something."
Okay.
There
Yeah.
is no doubt. I don't know what it is.
Probably by the look on your face. I
Yeah.
bet you were white as a sheet.
I was, you name it. I was scared, frightened, white as a ghost, wound up. It was a lot going on right then. Granddaddy up to this point hadn't said a word.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, I said, "Granddaddy, what do you think?" And he said, "I think that you should stay out of the woods at night." And then he confessed that he did not go down into the lower part of his property. Granny didn't even know it, but he said that he quit doing it years ago at night.
Did he say why?
Yeah, why?
He said, I've never seen anything. He says, but I have gone down there to grab something that he knew he had. He knew right where it was at. He needed it. He's working on something, putting something together. He would go down there and get it in the middle of in the dark. He said there have been a lot of times that he felt like something was circling him, watching him, just in the same vicinity that he was in, and it unnerved him.
Yeah. Okay. For our viewers, let's talk about that for a second, because when you're in the woods, there is, I don't know what you call it, a sixth sense or just a feeling or whatever, but there can be that sense that you're not alone. And anybody who's never experienced that, it's kind of hard to describe, but you do know.
Yes.
I was walking down an old creek bed one time, me and my brother, and something just caused me to stop suddenly, and I just knew immediately that I was being watched. And I turned to my left, and I kid you not, the biggest buck I've ever seen in my life was standing there looking at me. Big old rack on him, and he's just standing there looking directly at me. And it's true. You know when something's not right.
Yeah.
Yes.
They call it a sixth sense, whatever it is, that you have that. I think everybody has that.
That's right.
You know when something is lurking or watching you or something. You just feel it. You can feel it.
You can be in a department store.
Oh, yeah. You can feel it.
Feel somebody and turn around and there's somebody staring at you.
You. You know, you can feel it. Yeah. So totally with you on that. Yeah.
Well, I was completely relieved to tell the story and bring them in on my little secret, my little experience. They were supportive. They never made fun of me or never made sport of my experience. They were genuinely interested in what I had to say and the story that I told, and they were supportive.
Well,
I didn't let it scare me out of the woods, but
you don't go down there at night.
I'll go down there at night, but nowadays I have a thermal scope on my assault rifle.
Well, I tell you,
but I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it because I'm telling you, if it wanted me, it could have had me.
Well, I'd like to point out at this point that it's a telling fact that he didn't get in trouble when he woke his, and that tells you that his grandfather knew something was up.
Your grandfather probably knew what was going on.
They didn't get irritated with him for waking him up.
He probably knew what was coming. Right. Yeah,
they knew something was going on. I mean, your grandfather obviously knew something was out there.
He knew you'd had some kind of experience.
Yeah,
you know.
I think that as I started to tell the story, Granddaddy's like, I know what this boy's fixing to say.
I know what he's going to say. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Did your grandparents ever have any kind of other experiences themselves living out there?
If they did, they never told anyone.
Well, that's kind of the way those old folks were. Then, Jim, I don't know if I told you in the pre-interview or not. My great grandfather, my family came from eastern Oklahoma, and my dad told me this story when he was a boy. They were all at the house one day, and of course, those old folks, when they had farm work or whatever to do, they'd work all day long and come in the evening.
Well, you work till it's done.
You'd never see them until evening.
Yeah.
Well, they said about midday, or maybe it was late morning, I can't remember. Dad said that his grandpa, which was my great grandfather, walked into the house, and that was weird. And they said his face was white as a sheet, and he would not go back out to the fields where he had been working and driving a tractor, I guess tilling the field or doing something.
Right.
But he came in, washed his face, and sat down in his chair and would not go back. But he wouldn't talk about it. He wouldn't tell anybody. They'd ask him what was wrong, and he'd say, "Just don't worry about it." Yeah. But that's how those old timers are. Because they don't want anybody thinking that because back then your word was, word was gold. That's all a man had was his word. And if people started believing you were crazy or whatever, then that wasn't any good anymore. And so they just didn't talk about it. And my great grandfather, they said they never could get him to tell them what happened. But I suspect being in eastern Oklahoma and down there in LaFleur County where they were, that is supposedly a very big Bigfoot area.
Yes.
So, I totally understand that if your grandparents had any events or something like that, they probably just kept it to themselves.
Well, they never told me or any of my family that I am aware of.
It's just hard to believe that they lived out there and they never, other than having that feeling that they're being stalked or there's something that was watching them or whatever. It's just hard to believe they never. Of course, maybe this thing didn't want any interaction and didn't get involved with any humans until they actually encroached on its area.
Well, my grandparents' house fairly close to the highway.
Yeah.
The backside of my grandfather's place was pretty remote, but we're only talking 15 acres.
Right.
The old place was pretty remote, right up next to Buffalo Creek.
I see.
And
that's
pretty wild.
That's a pretty good point too. It's right on a creek, and a lot of the theories that I've read, these things, they are migratory, but they do tend to follow the creeks and rivers and streams.
Yeah, it's a water source. Yeah.
Well,
that makes sense.
That's very interesting. That's some good stuff there. That's a good story. I think that's as good as both of the other stories you told us in the first episode. In your mind, Jim, do you have any doubt of what you saw, of what it was?
I really don't have any doubt. I do believe that it was what we refer to as Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
Yeah, whatever name you want to give it.
What is that? People ask, well, what is that? Is it the missing link between man and ape? Or, there's so many different theories.
Right.
I tend to think that it's an undiscovered primate.
Yeah. Very well could be.
Yeah.
A lot of scientists who study this, like I can't think of his name right now, but a lot of scientists have hypothesized that it could be a remnant or an evolution of a prehistoric ape called Gigantopithecus. That was supposedly.
And I tend to subscribe to that theory as well. There are too many similarities between what they know about Gigantopithecus and what people are describing.
Right.
And it's
well, we don't know much. We don't know much about Gigantopithecus because really, the only fossil record of it is, I think, is a few teeth and part of a jawbone, I believe.
Jawbone.
Yeah, and that's all we have of it. So we don't really know. I recently I've been kind of doing a little research into giants in America, and a lot of people don't realize that you can go back to some of these early newspaper accounts, especially from the Eastern Coast, and find newspaper articles about these giant skeletons that have been found in America. I mean, they're news stories.
Yeah.
It actually happened. And you can look them up and find them. However, in just about every case, these bones were either collected or donated to the Smithsonian Institute to be studied, and for whatever reason, they've all been lost, every single one of them. And there's been multiple accounts of this. So, the skeptics say, well, why haven't we found any bones? Well, I believe that we have on many occasions. And somebody, and I won't say government, but somebody has eradicated the proof of this other than these newspaper articles. And I'll ask both of you, Harold and Jim, why in the world would a newspaper in 1920 or whatever falsify finding a giant skeleton?
That was my thought process. I'm like,
why would they do that?
They
There's
didn't
no reason.
really have a lot of incentive for sensationalism back then.
I mean, they want to sell newspapers, but back in those days, again, your word was the only bond that a man had. And news and media, the news media back then, they weren't like the news media now. They could get in very serious trouble for lying about anything in their news story without being able to corroborate it and everything.
Right.
So I just don't believe that those articles were a hoax, because these are in reputable newspapers. They're not. It's not like the Inquirer or something like that.
True.
So I tend to believe that Bigfoot skeletons, or what we call Bigfoot, have been found. And I know I don't discount your belief that it could be a Gigantopithecus, but there have been variances in a lot of these sightings, and they don't all look the same.
Right.
I believe personally that some of the sightings could be remnant, supposedly extinct hominid, the relic hominid is what they call it. And, like maybe not necessarily Neanderthal, although the description of a Neanderthal is very similar to what they call a swamp ape in Florida and Louisiana. So I don't know. Nobody knows. There's not any experts in this business, but it could just very well be a Gigantopithecus as well, or a relic hominid, or it could be all of the above.
True.
What do you think?
I still think that it's an undiscovered primate
Of some type. Yeah.
Of some type.
That's
enough. That's good enough.
I was going to say I can go
theory
with that.
Anybody has.
That's right. Now let me ask you this: it's been many years since your last sighting. How do you feel about all of that now? How does it affect you now?
I can start by saying that I would love to see it again.
You actually want to see it again?
I want to see it again. I don't know that I want to be surprised by it. I don't know that I want to walk around the curve in the trail and it be standing there or jump out. I would like to see it from
a safe distance.
Safe distance, maybe
right.
See it walk across a trail or go through an opening.
Yeah. Would you ever go out looking for it?
Oh yes.
Have you gone out looking for it?
I've never gone out with the express interest of saying, okay, this is it. We're going to go look for Bigfoot signs, possibly, catch him on camera. I've never done that. But when I have been out deer hunting, hog hunting at night with my thermal, I'm always thinking, you never know, you might see two legs here in just a second.
Yeah. It's always in the back of your mind.
It's always in the back of my mind. I catch myself looking in the distance.
Right.
I might be concentrating on something 20, 30, 40 yards ahead of me, but I'll glance up to see, well, wait a minute, that might be a position where I might be able to get a glimpse of something.
Well, I would imagine I would be the same way. Well, I kind of am that way, and I've never seen one. I have had some experiences that I haven't told on this show. Harold and I are going to do an episode one day where we don't have a guest, and I'm going to talk about some things, and he's going to talk about a few things. But I've never actually seen what you could say is a Bigfoot. But I would imagine that it would affect me greatly. I just don't know if it would. It seems to be one of two things whenever somebody has a Bigfoot encounter. One case being, I'm done with the woods, I'm never going back, or I'm especially never going back to that particular place, or it consumes their lives. They want to find it again. They can't get it out of their head. They kind of like you, I want to see it again.
Yeah.
I do want to see it again, and it would take something major like winning the lottery and just having all the time and money in the world before I would just stop, drop, and dedicate myself to finding it.
Yeah, because you have your own business, right? You're pretty busy.
Don't have time,
right. Well, at least you've got good common sense. There's been plenty of people who've had encounters that have destroyed their lives because of this thing, hunting this thing. At least you were smart enough not to do that.
Probably the best way for it to happen is
I know
least
what
expect
it is.
Yeah.
And it's out there. One of these days, we're going to find one. Somebody's going to come across with the truth, evidence, and then it'll be known.
Well, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I do want to ask you, if that happens, do you think that it will ever reach us, or do you think that the government or whoever it is that's trying to cover this stuff up, which I believe there is a pretty big cover up going on with these things, do you think that they'll stop that from happening?
I think that it's going to take what I would consider a third party, somebody that does not have a vested interest in keeping it quiet. If there is a group keeping it quiet, then it's going to take someone outside of that has enough influence,
right,
to get it out to the general public.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Well, listen, if you could talk to somebody who has had the similar experiences to yourself and give them some advice, what would that advice be? Or even if you're talking to somebody who's out in the woods a lot, what would that advice be?
Don't be afraid of it. Based on my experience, if this thing wants to hurt you, it can hurt you. Don't be scared of it. I actually believe that if I were to see this animal, or whatever you want to call it, again, I would pursue it. I would not run away from it.
You don't think that would be highly dangerous?
It very well could be. I would almost be willing to try and talk it down.
Really?
If I were in pursuit of it, and I know this sounds crazy, if I were in pursuit of it and it stopped, I would put my hands up. Whoa, wait a minute. I'm not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
And maybe that'd be my last thought that went through my head before it ripped my head off. I don't know. But I would try. I want to shake its hand.
Really? Wow. This thing affected you greatly. This thing left a very definite mark.
Let me explain my emotion a while ago. I was picturing me and my grandparents on the porch.
Uh-huh.
I was real close to them, and I miss them a lot.
Yeah, I miss mine
and
too.
It's more about that than it is the effect that this incident had on me.
Right.
The incident does not affect me like that. It was picturing me and my grandparents.
Right.
That's the feeling I got.
That's what I was thinking as well.
That's what I was thinking. Absolutely.
Because I don't tell this story. I haven't told this story in years. I mean, my immediate family members.
Yeah.
I tell them the story, but it's not like every time we get together, they're like, "Hey, tell us the Bigfoot story."
Yeah.
I haven't told it in earnest, in depth like this in years.
Yeah.
And just remembering and running it through my head, I pictured my grandparents.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And let's make it clear to the people. We didn't want to showcase this in the beginning of the stories, but here at the end, I think it's okay. You're not in this for any kind of gain. In fact, you've not told us your real name. Simply because you're not looking for notoriety. You're not.
I don't want notoriety.
Yeah.
I don't need for people to look at me and say, "Oh yeah, that's him." Tell the story.
Right.
I'm not interested in that at all. And I mean that's true in a lot of aspects in my life. I'm not the rah kind of guy.
Yeah.
Hey, look what I've done. I'm just not that way.
Right.
Well, not the way I'm geared.
The only reason I bring that up is because I want our listeners to understand that you're not getting anything out of this except a little bit of catharsis in telling the story.
Exactly. I've got a deer lease about an hour from the house here that is in the county that the most Bigfoot sightings in Texas have been recorded there. It currently holds the record for the most sightings.
I think I know what county that is.
And so we've got 1,200 acres leased in the midst of tens of thousands of acres.
Maybe you could take Harold and I out there on one night on a Bigfoot hunt. Harold, would you be up for that?
No.
That would not be a problem, gentlemen.
I would. I don't know if Harold would go, but
I know you'll go.
I would definitely go.
I'll tell you this: we had a member that got off of that lease because something spooked him early on in the season. And this guy was a complete outdoorsman. I mean, he would get there and do it like you're supposed to. You arrive in the dark, and
That's
then
right.
when you hunt the evening, you leave when it's completely dark. He would not, after this encounter, and a lot of people made fun of him about it, he would not go to his deer stand, and he would not leave his deer stand in the dark.
Well, did he say that he saw something, or did he ever tell?
He did not see anything. He actually went into the woods there adjacent to our camp site where everybody parks their trailers to relieve himself. And while he was in a crouched position taking care of business, he said that something came up behind him and made a noise that sounded exactly like a gorilla. And he said it was so close, he felt like he could feel the breath of this thing on his neck, and he's at his most vulnerable position. He stopped his business, ran out of the woods to his truck, called his wife, told her what happened, called the president of our lease, which was probably a mistake, told him what happened. Then it made it out to the lease members. Well, you know, a lot of guys, they're not real understanding. They picked at him pretty good.
This is why you want to keep your identity secret. Yeah, I got you.
And he left the lease. He said, "I'm not hunting anymore."
It must have been bad. Yeah.
It completely unnerved him. One of them, pretty good. I'm pretty good friends with him. I pulled him off to the side. I said, "You know, y'all probably shouldn't make fun of him like that." I said, "Because you don't know if he's not telling the truth." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, what do you mean? What, do you know something?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you some of what I know, but I can assure you, if you ridicule me, you and I are done." He said, "No, man, I wouldn't do that to you." And so I told him the story, and he's like, "Wow." I said, "Yeah, it's the truth." He said, "Well, you know, you're more believable than this other guy."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, you know, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen."
That's right. Jim, yeah. I can't thank you enough for sharing these stories with us. It's been incredible, actually.
Well, I appreciate it.
Harold and I we've sat here riveted through all of this, and I'd like to stay in touch with you. And if anytime you go out to that lease and you need somebody to keep your back, you holler at me, and I'll send Harold. I mean, I'll go with you.
I'll come well armed. Okay.
There you go. Don't mistake me for one now.
No, I won't.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. We really appreciate you coming on the show. And maybe if you have anything else happen, or if you ever find anybody that has had an experience, please let us know.
Shoot them our way.
Certainly.
Yeah, shoot them our way, and we'd like to hear their story too. Ladies and gentlemen, that about wraps up our time for this show. And
yes, it does.
We appreciate Jim coming on and sharing his stories, and we would appreciate it if you would tell us your story.
That's right. You can email us at pricepresleyshow@gmail.com. And also, don't forget, click, subscribe, and like our YouTube page. That would be Price and Presley Spook Show. That's where you can get this show and all the others we got up there.
That's right. We've got several shows posted.
A lot up there right now. Yeah.
Good ones, as a matter of fact.
Yes, go check them out. Start from the beginning.
And don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube page and leave us a comment. We want to hear what you thought about Jim's experiences. And if you've had any experiences, you can leave them in the comments as well. But talk to us.
And it doesn't have to be Bigfoot. It can be anything.
That's right.
Any kind of experience.
UFOs.
Any kind of spooky.
Chupacabra,
scary stuff you can't explain. You know, everybody has. We'd like to hear about
the Siberian death worm, whatever.
Yes, that.
But the most important thing is talk to us. Let us know. In fact, we had earlier a while back we had posted. We want to hear your Ouija board.
Oh
stories.
Yeah, that's right, Ouija board. Now I don't do the Ouija board.
Those are spooky.
Man, that's some crazy stuff. I know. I've heard stories from other people.
That's right.
About weird and scary stories involving the Ouija board.
Yeah, so if you want to give us your Ouija board stories, be sure you email us. What's that email address again, Harold?
PricePresleyShow@gmail.com. That is PricePresleyShow@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. Well, listen, folks, we are out of time. Thank you again, Jim. And listen, folks, stay in touch with us. Click subscribe, follow us, give us a comment, give us a thumbs up. We want to hear from you. I'm Terry Price.
I am Harold Presley.
Don't get spooked.